How's it going, everybody? I wanted to take a quick couple of minutes and give you guys a little bit of an update as to what I'm doing as of lately. I'm nearing the very end of my Advanced Technologies course, as most of you should be. If you're following along with my channel, you should know that I am nearing the end of all of the videos that we'll be covering. I'm actually working on just a couple last pieces of it, and I'll be uploading those and getting them situated. What I've decided to do in the process of doing that was go back through the RNS v5 expanded blueprint and make sure that I really know what I'm talking about. So this is going to be a lab preparation series where we're going to go back through and we're going to make sure we know how to configure, verify, and troubleshoot every item that's on this list. So just to give you guys an idea, I've actually started on the layer 3 section in the routing protocols. So I've started here, and I will be going through, I've already done RIP, and I'm partway through EIGRP. So we're going to go through and make sure that we can configure and do everything that's on this blueprint. So this is more of a checklist after you've gone through the Advanced Technologies course, and you've said, okay, I know how to do that. Okay, well, it's time to prove it. So this series is going to be fairly in-depth. There's no technology explanation. I mean, there's a little bit here and there of me just, for lack of a better term, babbling about what the technology does and where you would use it. But there's no slide work. There's a little bit of online Googling of things if I'm not sure where stuff goes. I keep a lot of the troubleshooting live so you guys can see how that goes through. But pretty much everything that you're going to see through this entire section is making sure you know how to do filtering with passive interfaces with EIGRP. You know, there's nothing we're going to leave out as we go through here. This, I've actually got a link inside of the description file. So if you click on the description, open up the description, there's a file to my Google Drive, which I have shared to everybody. You'll have access to download this. There's a you'll be able to download the configuration file, which is the GNS3 file. Download that. That's got the topology.net file in it. So if you have GNS3 and you want to populate it, go right ahead. I'll show you guys what the topology looks like here in just a minute. But this is going to be, all right, and the RNS v5 expanded blueprint is there as well. So you guys will be able to pop open the blueprint. You'll be able to go through and check this stuff out as we go through it. Anything marked with an asterisk or with a strike through, I will come. There's certain things like EIGRP over the top we won't be covering because of the fact that that's 15.4 iOS, and I don't have 15.4 iOS available. So everything you see in here is going to be what we're going to be covering. As you can see, it's 14 pages of information we're going to have to go through. So like, for instance, we're in OSPF, and there's a lot with OSPF and a lot with BGP. So we're going to go through each section. I am consistently working on it. They will be labeled CCIE Labs. Like I mentioned, there won't be any slide work. That's for if you really want to know how technology works, you need to go through the Advanced Technologies course first. Anything that you see on here that there's not a video for it or an associated video in the technologies videos, then that's something you will have to look up. Like Get VPN, I haven't covered that. Layer 2 VPN, Layer 2 tunneling protocol v3, haven't covered it. Atom, haven't covered it. VPLS, haven't covered it. Those are going to be things that you're going to need to go through and figure out how to do. Internet access for MPLS, something we will cover, but it's not something that was covered inside of the Advanced Technologies class. It's one of those things that I'll have to show you how it works and kind of give you the idea for it. Basically, at the end of the day, all this is doing is you're giving your MPLS Layer 3 VPNs, your private WAN services, internet access. That's basically all it is. So you could look at that as a central services VPN as well, to where you can have everything honed back at one location. We'll take a look at those in detail later on. But this is what we're going to be covering. So we're going to go through every potential possibility in here. This is the expanded blueprint. So this is what the technologies are capable of doing. So if you've never actually gone through the entire blueprint before, this is going to be a good place for you to start. And I would recommend doing this as you're preparing for it. Don't wait until you're a month out, because I've been going at this now for about 3 days, and I've only covered RIP and EIGRP. And I feel like I spend 8 to 10 hours a day going over this stuff. So whenever I have a moment that I can lab, I do it. So I know a majority of the technologies already, so I don't have to spend a lot of time going through the material and figuring out, okay, how does this work? So a lot of this stuff we're going to be going through and figuring how it works, making sure we know what's where and how to do it. And if there's a limitation of the iOS image that we're going to be running, I have a couple of CSR 1000Vs in a virtual machine set up to where I will be able to go in there and show you the associated commands and where this stuff is located. If we run into a hiccup, I will do my best to find it in the documentation. I've actually got the documentation all downloaded so that I don't have to go up there and look. So as I get closer and closer to my lab time, that's when we'll go through there. So as you can see, it's quite a bit of information to go through. We'll be taking a look at every topic, whether or not we actually configure every detail when it comes to services. We might just cover what a DHCP on-demand pool might be, or what is a DHCP proxy. I haven't determined that yet. As I get further along and I'm dialing things in, then I might. But the primary purpose for this entire series, which is going to be pretty in-depth, the primary premise for it and the reason for it is, as you're going through your preparation, you want to make sure that you cover everything you don't know and you do know. So obviously, I don't need to go back through and learn how to implement routing or OSPF or EdgeRP or layer 2 switching. I know how to do that stuff already. So I'm going to focus on the things that I'm not as strong in. This way here, I may not be an expert in every detail about DHCP, but I'll know what the DHCP server is. I'll know what the DHCP client is. I'll know what the relay agent is, what the host pools mean. So it's not necessarily knowing every detail about every item on the list, but it's knowing, okay, do I know what it is? And if I was asked a question on it, would I have an idea as to what they're talking about? That's what you need to think about before you get into this, because if you get into it and you're like, I don't know, then you need to stop what you're doing. If you're just fiddling around with this, that, or the other, go back and look into the stuff. That's what I'm doing right now. And a friend of mine who just passed his CCIE last month, he went out and this is exactly what he did. He goes, dude, it helped a ton. So what you have in front of you right now is going to be you're going to be doing you have the topology in front of you, and basically what this is what we're going to be running with inside of our CCIE Labs, and it's actually the topology you're going to see when you do the full lab. This is the one that I'm actually in the process of writing, and I actually put the writing on hold as I went through here because I had to redo the lab because I was writing some labs in a way that could have worked, but one of the reasons why I'm doing that is so that when I go back to write the lab and I've got the blueprint up in front of me while I'm writing the lab, and I'm like, okay, well, that worked. And I have to, in order for me to write what I consider to be a CCIE level lab, I have to know all the details of all the technologies. So going back through the labs and doing this is going to be where we come into play with this. So this is why I'm taking the time to do this, because of the fact of I'm going for my CCIE. I'm scheduled in June to take it. Whether or not I postpone that based on how I'm feeling, I can totally do that if I'd like. I've got about 6 months before I'm there, but I'm being very I'm keeping very aware, and I'm keeping in tune with what I'm learning and what I know how to do. Now I'm going back to the blueprint. I am roughly about, I'd say, a good 80% I know how to do here. Other than like EEM, I can do some basic things with EEM, some basic things with system management. I mean, just about everything in here I could do. But it's one of those things where I would rather be 95, 98, 99% complete, knowing how I can sit there and somebody could ask me, literally, if we were to go into an interview and you were to have this in front of you and you were to ask me a question on, say, do you know what the AutoRP listener command is? Well, yes, I do. Well, what does it do? It's a dense mode advertisement for 224.0.139 and 224.0.140 to advertise the AutoRP config into your sparse mode design so that every router can hear it. So then you know where your RP and your mapping are going to be. That's the general idea for it. So one of those things is going to be knowing how all this stuff works. So I can pretty much answer any question you could ask me about how this stuff works. I'm still working on PIC or BGP PIC because it's not something I've spent a lot of time on, and BGP dampening and AdPath. I know what AdPath is. It's adding routes, just like EdgeRP AdPath is. But there's a few things that are miscellaneous that we need to make sure we know how to do, and this is the series that we're going to be using to get there. So there's not going to be any configuration. There's not going to be any. I'm sorry, not any configuration. There's not going to be any slide work in here, anything like that. It's going to be full on getting on the command line, getting it operational. Now you might ask, there's 32 routers on here. How much memory are you taking? Actually, I'm running on a server that has got 64 gigs available. Now I know not everybody can do that, so one of the things that I'm doing is I'm going through it, as I'm actually breaking it up per area or per section. So I'll let you know ahead of time what routers you need to be working on. So you could be, on average, it's going to be, 3 to 6, depending on the situation. So we have 6 routers over here, we have 4 routers over here, we have 3 routers over here, 2 routers here. So depending on the section that I'm working on, I would recommend only turning on that number of routers and connecting them similarly to the way that I do. You don't have to be running the exact same. Well, what you could do is you could go in and turn those particular routers on and leave everything else off. So eventually, it will be a full-scale lab that will have everything working and everything will be configured and operational. We'll have IGP, BGP, redistribution will be working, doing testing with different features and options. And then from there, it'll eventually be a full-scale lab. So literally everything that's on that blueprint will be tested in here. Anything that can't be tested, I have a little 4-router CSR lab set up inside of VMware Workstation. I'll show you how to get that operational in another video. There's been a lot of questions on how to get, to get PuTTY tabbed. And PuTTY tabbed is actually, this is a different setup, but when you're dealing with PuTTY, if you download Super PuTTY, just go Google Super PuTTY, you'll get this pop up as long as it knows how to, and you map it to wherever the PuTTY exe is. The easiest way to do that, to set up Super PuTTY, is as long as you know the IP address. If it's going to be on a remote server, then all you have to do is go click on View, Sessions, and then I'm going to click on, for instance, I have a Windows Vista computer that I'm using for GNS3 because this guy, the CCIE Learn one here, I'm sorry, the CCIE, I have 32 routers set up in here. This one and CCIE Learn are set up on a Windows 7 computer. And right now, the CCIE, the full-scale lab, is what I have turned on. So I needed another computer with enough memory to do it. So anything that's on locally, if I was to right-click on here and right-click and go to Edit for R1 on Vista, just Vista happens to be the computer I'm working on, or it's enabled in. If I click on Edit, and I type in R1 and then the IP address and then the port number I'm working off of. GNS3 tells you what port number it is. So if you were to go in there and click on the, if you were to hover over the router and you look at what the console port number is, it's going to tell you router 1, or it's going to tell you the port number. Just plug that in right here. And if you know the IP address, and as long as GNS3 is installed and you've allowed it through the firewall, make sure you allow Dynamips through the firewall, then you'll have no problem connecting into it remotely. So I'm on the computer I'm recording on, and what I'm connected to on with GNS3 is in a completely different computer. It's actually a virtual machine running inside of a VMware Workstation, and all you got to do is make sure that you allow Dynamips through the firewall. That's how you would do it if it's going to a remote computer. If it's on a local computer, you just type in 127.0.0.1 and then the port number that GNS3 gives you. And so depending on how many routers you have, that's where it's going to go. I have 10 routers hooked up currently. Going from there, I've had a lot of other people ask me, what about iOS images? I can't give you iOS images. What I can do is I can point you in a way to try to download them, because I work for a Cisco reseller. I get the iOS images for free because everything that I work on is something that we have in our environment. And because of the non-disclosure agreements and the service contracts, things like that, I can't give you an iOS image. If you want to go out there and find one on your own, go for it. But this is going to be one of those things where when you're going through and you're trying this stuff out, I've had a lot of people ask me, do you have to be on the latest iOS image? No, you don't. But what I would recommend doing, and let's see here. Do I want to pull that up? Let's see. We can probably, if you were to go to Cisco's website and download or do a Google search for CSR 1000V, which is going to be the cloud services router. It's just it's the ASR 1006 that they were able to turn into a virtual machine that you can put inside of your virtual environment. It's a great feature because it allows you to run all of the ASR commands and capabilities inside of a virtual machine. It's just like running the ASR 1000, same look and feel, iOS XE platform. I would recommend downloading one or two of those, putting them into VMware Workstation, connecting into it. As long as you have an IP address and it supports Telnet, you'll get into Telnet or be able to do that. I will be showing you how to do this, so don't worry about if you don't know how to do it now. Once I start getting labs finished and knocked out, so once I get RIP and EIGRP out, I think I'll just start kicking those out. So I'm not like, waiting 6 months to give you guys 400 videos or something like that. So that's what I'll do is I'll do an entire section and then I'll kick it out just like I've been doing. So when I get done with OSPF, I uploaded OSPF. When I get done with BGP, the same thing. MPLS, same thing. So once I get done with the security, quality of service, and services, and system management, that's all I have left to cover. That's when I'll be kicking that type of stuff out. That'll be in the technologies videos. So if you haven't gone through those yet, that's where I would recommend you going. So like I mentioned earlier, if you're not sure how something works, or you're not sure why, how I'm getting to the result I'm getting to, these labs are not going to be detailed explanations like I did in the technology labs. They're going to be getting in there. There's an assumption you already know this stuff. So you're at the somewhat expert level. You're preparing for the lab. You're through the learn phase. You're in the lab phase, because there's actually 3 sections to the CCIE. You have the written exam, which is going to be all your theory. So I'm assuming you're already through that and you know what OSPF is, you know what BGP is. I don't have to explain to you what they do. And you've already gone through the learn phase. So you've gone through all the technology videos. And if I was to ask you, do you know what the P bit is inside of OSPF? If you can't answer that question, you need to go Google it or watch the video when it comes to not so stubby areas. So that's going to be where it's the propagate bit. It allows you to take type 5 LSAs and translate them outside of the NSSA and into the regular area. So if you can't rattle this stuff off the top of your head, not every single item that's on the blueprint, but 95% of them. If you can't do that, this is the section you need to be taking a look at in detail, because we're going to go through it, learn how to configure it, because there's a lot of commands out there. Like when I was going through RIP's pretty straightforward. It took me a couple. I was like, okay, I forgot how to do that, but it's been 6 months since I touched it. So it's one of those things that's going all the way back through, but we're not sitting there wasting our time talking about how this works or how that works, what this feature is, what that feature is, what the show commands are, what the debug commands are. We're getting in the command line. We're just jumping into it. There's no whiteboard, or I'm sorry, there's no, what do you call it? There's no slide work. There's no notepad behind the scenes where you guys can watch, read ahead. It's all command line. It's all configuration. So go in there, jump into it, see what you guys can do. That's what I've got going on. I will be available for questions. Email me through my YouTube channel or through my normal email. This will be available. If you look at the description of the video, there's a link in there with access to all of this information. Again, no iOS images. Super Putty won't be there. What you will be able to get is both the topology file, which is the topology picture. You'll also be able to get the full scale, or you'll be able to get the, might go away. Oh, didn't want to do that. Anyway, you'll be able to get the RNS v5 expanded blueprint, which is going to be every detail we're going to cover. This picture, the .NET file for GNS3, and the initial configuration files. So when you guys first spin them up, don't spin all the routers up. Spin up a couple, test it out, make sure you guys can do it. For a machine-wise, for running all 32 routers, I would recommend something between 8 and 12 gigs. The computer I'm recording on has 12 gigs, and I got to about 60%. So I gave, 300 megabytes of RAM, 312, something like that, per router. So it's not too hairy. I've been able to enable a NAT on there and activate a couple other features that work just fine. So that's what we're going to be covering. So I wanted to give you guys a quick, hey, this is what's going on. This is what you guys can expect to see. This is not the full-scale lab. That will be dictated as such when I go to release this information and get through that. So that's coming. It's just not right yet. I just figured this would be a good way to ramp up to it, because at that time, it's going to be, I'm thinking about doing a couple of labs. You know, one's going to be really, really crazy. The other one's going to be not so bad. So that's what you guys can expect from me. I hope this has been informative for you, and I would like to thank you for reviewing.